Alison, breaking news. The final report has just been released in which it concludes that 201 babies' lives and the lives of 9 mothers could have been saved if they'd had better care within the trust.
Well, Dr Larisa, our fertility expert, is here and we're going to be speaking to her in just a moment. First, let's talk to Debbie Greenaway, who was a maternity patient at Shrewsbury and Telford Hospital NHS Trust. Morning to you. Thank you for doing this today. And it's taken you a long time to get to a place where you felt you could talk out loud about this.
Absolutely, because to begin with, we thought it was just us. We had no idea until the start of the report that obviously exactly the same story had happened to so many people and there were so many similarities. Obviously now it's, with the report coming out today is the time if I don't sort of tell my story and just sort of raise that awareness and hopefully give women a voice.
Absolutely. Well, let's do that now then, and let's take this back to 2001. And so you and your partner were struggling to conceive naturally, so you went down the IVF route. It was successful. You were found out that you were carrying not 1 baby, but 2, and it was twins. So in that moment, how did you feel?
Absolutely. It was amazing. Yeah, it was everything we could have hoped for. Obviously, we were nervous. You know, you think, oh, if I got 2, maybe twice as much worry and twice as much can go wrong. But we were absolutely thrilled. Yeah. Couldn't believe our luck.
And so the pregnancy went well. I mean, it was all okay. And then towards the tail end, about 37 weeks, it was decided that you should be induced. Explain what happened there when you were under their care.
So I went in on the Wednesday with 2 quite large, both around 7-pound babies, healthy, no problems. I was induced on the Wednesday morning. Not a lot happened, it was quite slow. And then towards the end of the second day, that's when the first time the midwife couldn't find John's heartbeat and there was issues around it. And it was about 3 hours of can find it, couldn't find it. The midwife, I cannot sort of say, and she was fantastic. She was very, very concerned. She was saying to my husband, this is wrong, we should be getting a caesarean. Consultants came and went. At one point, another consultant came in. There was absolutely no communication. I didn't know what drugs I was being given or why. And one consultant, I've only learnt afterwards, was trying to take a fetal blood sample from John, which basically they cut his head to find his oxygen level. But they never explained what they were doing. It was just, she had no conversation with me at all. I thought she was delivering them because I was in excruciating pain at this point. There was this new doctor came in. I thought she was delivering the babies.
Well, I mean, your instinct at the time was that we need to get the babies out.
Absolutely.
We should have a caesarean. And in fact, even before you even got into labour, you were talking about having a caesarean, and you were told then that as a hospital that they had the lowest caesarean rate. They seemed to be very, very confident in that. So there did seem to be this push towards natural birth. And
100%. I went to my first consultant meeting quite early on in my pregnancy, and that was the first time that I said then, will I be having a caesarean, just presuming because it was twins. And straight away brushed off, absolutely no reason that you would need a caesarean. You're healthy, your babies are healthy. We have the lowest caesarean rate in the country. We're proud of it. There's no reason for you not to have a natural birth.
As you say, there were communication issues. The urgency of it doesn't sound as if it was taken particularly seriously, considering that nurse flagged that she couldn't hear the heartbeat so early on.
That went on for a long time.
And so when you had the babies, at what point did you realise that you'd lost John?
The decision to go for a caesarean was made, and then it was about half an hour after that, so there was more delay, that all of a sudden it was, this is an emergency caesarean. I came to a couple of hours later, it was around 5 o'clock in the morning, I went in just after 3. And when I woke up, all I can remember is my husband was to the right of me, and as I came to, he handed me Daniel and said, here's Daniel. I went, where's John? And literally at that point, another doctor I'd never seen before came in from the left and said, there's nothing we can do, we need to turn the life support off.
Oh, my God.
And that was like, I'd literally just come round. And then before I could sort of react to that, he'd walked off, and literally again, seconds later, he came back in carrying John and handed him to me. And in my just come round state, no communication, I thought, oh, I got that wrong. He's here, he's fine. And I held him. When he was handed to me, I actually thought he was alive, and I got confused.
God, I'm so
and obviously
sorry.
it was only when I was holding him it dawned.
How do you process something like that? Because when for 9 months you're carrying a baby and all you're focusing on is birth and life, and then for that moment to switch entirely, and suddenly you're dealing with death.
Yeah.
How do you process that?
I mean, I didn't for a long time. It was very difficult. I came quite withdrawn in on myself, didn't go out much. I was very, very ridiculously overprotective with hindsight over my youngest son. Wouldn't let anybody else sort of take responsibility for him or have him. I didn't go to work until he'd started school, and then that was only a sort of part-time job where I could drop him off at school and pick him up.
That he was okay?
Yeah.
I understand that.
You had a meeting, a consultants meeting afterwards. And what were you told at that meeting?
We went in and I was told that there'd been a review. I only learnt afterwards that this was a in-house review with the same few people within the hospital who did it. But at the time, I was told a review, so I'm thinking, I'm listening to you, everything's been sort of looked at. And I was told it was one of those things, absolutely nothing could have been done about it. That I'd gone in healthy, don't know why, but it had happened.
Well, it was the post-mortem showed that John had suffered major brain damage at least 6 hours before delivery, but up to 24 hours before. Obviously, and quite rightly, there's the pain, but also anger at this situation, because could it have been avoided?
Absolutely, because the timings there, they're saying, you know, probably between 12 and 24 hours, at minimum 6. So all that time frame was between when I went in with my 2 healthy babies with absolutely no issues, but then an awful long time from when he was brain damaged to delivery is, you know, a long time.
Daniel's 20 now?
20 now, yeah.
So, Larisa, Daniel is 20. The report dropped today. We've heard how many babies were lost. We've heard how many mothers were lost. The caveat is we know how incredible our NHS is and how much care is taken, but obviously not here. How the hell did this happen?
This is such a huge, huge question, and you're right to raise the point of 2 decades worth of silence on this, essentially, and things going wrong and having not been raised earlier and some accountability being taken. The answers are multifactorial. I think that, first of all, we have to look at why these targets were set and why there was this obsession to bring down caesarean section rates and why there was an obsession towards this natural birth movement, because even the word natural has been completely misconstrued and deconstructed by society. Actually, what we're talking about here is an obsession with vaginal births. And caesarean sections are part of the natural process. They are part of that entire holistic experience. There are definite times when you need to do a caesarean section to keep mother and baby safe. And it's really, really important to listen to the women and what their needs are. Because we discussed this as well. You know, Debbie had gone through IVF. There's an awful lot of trauma associated with that, and appreciating someone's mental health state and as to how that might be impacting their decision to want to have a caesarean rather than experience
But how many babies do you lose over a period of time before somebody somewhere says our policy is not right here? So you lose...
I know, 20
because we know that some parents lost a baby, went back and lost another. So how long does it take before someone on the board or within the consulting staff says, we're getting this wrong?
To me, it seems like there was a culture of cover-ups, and certainly with some of the whistleblowers that have come forward who've spoken out about this, it seems that there were things which were wrong with the entire culture of that department. And sadly, as an obstetrician working in this field, I have also myself experienced elements of that, where there are rife elements of bullying, a toxic culture where you cannot speak up, you are silenced if you dare to speak out about certain situations
even
that
now?
you might be. Even now,
I can't
yes.
believe
because, you know, the labour ward is a traumatic environment at times. It's a beautiful place to exist in and to welcome new life in, but you're accepting huge amounts of risks and responsibilities that go with that. And sadly, because the stakes are high with all of that, it can sometimes feel as if you're struggling to survive in that entire environment. And
but surely those people who attempt to silence the whistleblowers, as in this case here, as in other reports, well, you hear all the time, we must make sure this never happens again. Then it does. So surely those people attempting to muffle the noise realise that eventually, one day, you're going to get found out. You can't keep it quiet forever.
And which is what is happening now. This is a real watershed moment for the NHS, actually, for an institution as big as this, which has done so much good. We know that through the pandemic. But there are real issues here. We cannot ignore the fact that around 300 babies lost their lives.
Yeah.
That 12 to 13 mothers
that has
lost their
on
lives.
the entire family.
Absolutely.
Daniel, for you, for all your family.
And the whole thing is that when we were speaking together and from reading and listening to some of the other stories, all of these families say the same thing, that they were silenced, they were blamed, the finger was pointed at them. So in amongst their tragic grief and the emotions they were dealing with, they were blamed. And sadly, that can sometimes be a reflection of the entire culture which goes on within departments and which then filters down.
Do you get any comfort by the fact that this is now out today?
Definitely, as I say, it's the watershed moment for the whole thing that has been obviously going on for years and years, and that people hadn't been aware of until, 2, perhaps 3 years ago, when the first it was brought out into the public and people started to look a bit deeper. But it's just so shocking how things can be, something like maternity care is target-led. This is the amount of caesareans we're allowed. And having that proud, how proud they were that they had the lowest caesarean rate in the country is the culture that shouldn't be happening.
Well, Louise Barnett, Chief Executive of the Shrewsbury and Telford Hospital NHS Trust, said today's report is deeply distressing and we offer our wholehearted apologies for the pain and distress caused. We have a duty to ensure that the care we provide is safe, effective and high quality. Thanks to the hard work and commitment of my colleagues, we have delivered all of the actions we were asked to following the first Ockenden report. We owe it to those families we failed and those we care for today and in the future to continue to make improvements. What do you feel about that?
Without sounding bitter, but we expect people to apologise. That's what they're going to do. When they're confronted with this has happened, this is the result of it, you're going to say sorry. It doesn't change what's happened for 20 years.
Could this be happening in another trust at the moment, and that in the future we learn some more deeply distressing figures and the trauma caused to families and have to have another report because lessons weren't learnt?
I think the sad answer to your question, Phil, is yes, that potentially there is more to discover here. But I think we need to be brave enough to look at these root causes. Why is this happening? To have a transparent, honest culture where patients are listened to and their views are taken into account, that there is accountability for what is done and for what goes on. The maternity ward, it's unlike any other place in the hospital. You're responsible for mother and baby, and whatever happens has real impacts on families for many, many decades afterwards, sometimes transgenerationally. But I think aside from the patient-centred care, which must be better and shouldn't be target-led and focused because every individual is unique, we also need to look at the culture amongst doctors and midwives to stop, this silencing culture, which is still going on. And even as I speak about this, I feel deeply triggered by what has happened to you and what's gone on, because it is awful. And we need to be able to have these honest conversations. We need to feel supported in what we're doing, have better welfare support, better education, and just all round better care, really more compassionate care for everyone that then filters down to our patients.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you. Well done you for speaking out so bravely. You did amazingly, really amazing.